Hello everyone, this is Andrew Distad. Welcome again to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the financial calculator. I use an HP 10B2, but there's a couple others out there made by different manufacturers, but they all do the same thing. Just make sure you have the 5 main buttons, which are N, which stands for number of payments, I/YR, which stands for interest per year, PV, which stands for present value, PMT, which stands for payment, and FV, which stands for future value. We'll also be using the RCL button, which stands for recall, and the C button, which stands for clear, which will erase anything you have entered into all of those 5 buttons. And the way you operate each of these buttons is by entering a figure with the numeric keypad here and entering one of the 5 buttons at the top. So, for example, if it's a 30-year mortgage, we have 360 monthly payments over those 30 years because there are 12 months in a year, and 30 years times 12 months is 360. So you would enter 360. You can either enter it with your mouse here, or you can enter it on the keypad as well. And then you want to press N to enter that in, and you'll want to wait for the decimal and the 2 zeros to show up to confirm that you pressed N. And what we'll be doing to start off right now is to solve for the payment. And this also brings me to another point I'd like to make, which is the rule of 4 to get the 5th. Anytime you have 4 of these buttons, you can always find the 5th. So if you know the number of payments, and you know the interest rate, and the beginning balance, and if it's fully amortized or interest only, that's what you enter the future value. If it's interest only, you enter the balloon amount, or if it's fully amortized, you make it 0, or if there's some other balloon you want to have, you enter into future value. Then if you know those 4, you can solve for payment. So let's say we have a 30-year mortgage, like we just entered, with a 7% interest rate. So I'll hit the 7 key, hit the I/YR button, and then let's make it a $100,000 loan. Keep things simple. And make sure you always hit the negative button if this is something that is owed, which is always the case with a mortgage note. So then if it's fully amortized, we'll hit 0 and enter it into the FV bucket. And now you have 4 of the buckets filled, so you don't need to enter anything before hitting the payment button to solve for the payment. So we'll hit PMT, and there's your payment. For a 30-year mortgage at 7% with a beginning balance of $100,000, we have a payment amount, since we entered 0 in a future value, we have a payment amount of $665.30. Now, if you want to solve for the current balance, all of these things are saved in here. So what you can do next is say 2 years have gone by. You can also hit the recall button here and the N to find out what's in the bucket of N, which is 30 years, so there hasn't been any payments made. You can subtract, there's been 24 payments made, since there's 2 years of payment that have gone by. And you get the equal button and just punch that right into the N bucket so that you now have 2 years, and you want to solve for the present value to find out what the balance is. So now you have 2 years less payments, which is 30 minus 2, which is 28 years, and you have that balance. See, it's not 100,000 anymore. So that is how you solve for the current balance. Another thing you can do is say somebody comes to you with this note and you are the buyer. You are ready to invest in a mortgage note. Say there is $50,000 down, good chunk of equity, you feel secure because there's around 66.6 loan to value with that kind of a down payment. Or say they put $100,000 down and you have a $100,000 down, 50% loan to value, definitely a secure investment, provided that the property value checks out. That hasn't significantly dropped. But anyhow, you got this note here, but it's at 7%, so you're not going to want to pay the full amount of 97,000. Of course, you're also going to have to account for paying for the title and appraisal work and all that. So there's closing costs involved that you need to also account into the pay price, of course, because if paid off the next day, you lose money. But you also want to make sure it meets your yield requirements too. So let's hit the recall button and then hit I/YR, and it should pop up 7%. And what you want to do now is, say if your yield is 12%, all you have to do is hit 1, 2, I'll just enter it on my keypad, and hit the I/YR button, and now we'll be solving for the present value, which is a pay price of 64,000. And see, it's not the 97,000 before, because in order to get a 12% yield, you need to pay 64,000. Of course, the monthly payments will stay the same, but with this pay price, it means that you will be getting a 12% yield. Now, of course, if they paid it off the next day, you would have a yield that would be much higher, because all you had to do was put up 64,000 to make a quick 33,000, because 97 minus 64 is 33. You had to put up that money, and if they pay off early, great, but if they don't, you got to account for the worst case scenario. So that is if they paid it off until the very last payment. So we have taught you how to solve for the payment, we have taught you how to solve for the current balance, and we've also shown you how to change your yield. But another thing you can do is, let's say you have a 3-year note. Here's a good example. My first deal I closed was a 3-year note, so it's 36 months, and the interest rate was 12%. You gotta make sure it pops up there after we hit 12. 1, 2, oops. Now let's clear it just to make sure. Now when it goofs up on you, you want to make sure it's, because I saw a calculation pop up there, you want to make sure it doesn't think you're trying to solve for it with just those 2 buckets, because that'll totally change your answer. There we go. So we've got 3 years, 12% interest rate, and we have a present value of 90,000. Make sure you make it negative. Looks like it's freezing up here. Okay, so you have 90,000 entered into the present value, and the payment amount just so happens to be exactly 900,000. And you'll find that too with an interest rate at 12%. If it's an interest-only loan, all you have to do to find out the payment amount on an interest-only loan is to take off a couple zeros, because a second ago this said 90,000. So all you gotta do is trim off 2 zeros, and that's your payment amount for an interest-only loan. So what we're doing right now is solving for the future value to confirm that it is in fact 90,000 like the present value. So we've entered 36 into N, we've entered 12 into I/YR, we've entered 90,000 into the present value and $900 into the payment amount. So this should say 90,000, and it does. So that is solving for the future value. So it looks like the only thing we haven't solved for now is N, which is just reiterating the rule of 40 to the 5th. So you could do this on your own, and you wouldn't need my instructions.